Hey, thank you so much. I'm Dr. Ethan Kellum. Thank you for being here today. Today, sitting down with a dear friend, patient, and you guys know him as Iron Mike. Appreciate you being on with me today.
Doc, appreciate you, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Thank you for having me, man.
All right, so we're just gonna throw some questions, have a little conversation. And the first one that I want to ask you about has to do with, you're known as Iron Mike in that cage. That's what you're known as. And what qualities or values make up the side of Michael Chandler that exists outside of the fighting?
Yeah, I think just to start, the idea of nicknames is very important and kind of funny. Like when you think about it, like 'cause some guys have nicknames, some guys don't have nicknames, and some people have said, "Well, you stole, Mike Tyson's nickname or whatever." But when I was first started fighting out, I was kind of that like real tight, throwing big bombs. Like, and people were like, "Man, you fight like Mike Tyson or whatever." And in the sport, you got to be careful if you don't accept a nickname and like give yourself a nickname or whatever, they'll make it for you, so you don't want to end up with a nickname that you don't want, and then all of a sudden one day everybody calls you Twinkle Toes or something like that, But I think, similar to kind of the Iron Mike Tyson vein, just constantly coming forward, constant pressure, throwing big bombs, looking for the knockout at all times, just nonstop action. But outside of the octagon, I think it's just, you see a lot of, I think, my internal being, who I am, that manifests itself inside of the cage of who I am outside of the cage. Just determination, discipline, violent, but not violent in a physical sense, but violence of action, like taking action, violence of decision, making a decision. I've always thought, I've always kind of pondered on I think it was General George Patton who said, a halfway decent plan executed now is better than a perfect plan executed later on, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't have all the information, just go. Even if you're not sure that you can do the reps, try it. Even if you don't know if you're going to be successful, go and do it. So I'm just like a guy who, I think I grew up with so much security or seeking of security, like where I came from. I always say I'm a small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things, and what I've accomplished and the chances I've taken and the shots I've taken that have worked out, and somehow I am where I am. I think you see in my life, I'm not afraid to take chances because I was conditioned so much to play small, to seek security, to seek comfort. So you see it in my workouts, you see it in my fight style, and you kind of see it in my life. So I'm just a guy who likes to take chances and continue to move forward.
One of the first times I met you, and once again met you as a patient, and I don't know, we've had a good time. We've connected as time has gone. But you talked about the 3 Fs. Tell us about the 3 Fs, what they are for you, and how where that framework comes from, and how you live that on a daily.
Yeah, I mean, my 3 Fs are faith, family, and fighting. And then when we first met each other, I think we had just had Hap. We just had one son maybe at that time. Obviously, I'm married to my wife Bree now for over a decade. So the fighting is what I do, but who I am is a man trying to create the greatest life I ever possibly could for myself. So then, in turn, I can create a great life for my family, provide for them, protect them. So, being the best father and the best husband I possibly can. Now I'm the father of 3 children. We got our two boys, Hap and Ace, and then our daughter Drew. And then just trying to make good on the promise I made to Bree on our wedding day that I was going to take care of her, I was going to provide for her, I was going to, and not just provide for her physically, financially, but to provide for her emotionally and just continue to grow. And it's funny to see how a marriage continues to evolve as you become more and more mature, longer in the tooth in life. And then the cornerstone of everything is my faith. I grew up Catholic, I kind of inherited it, so to speak. Like my mom and dad were just like, hey, we're going to be, Catholics. And we did my first Holy Communion, my confirmation. And I kind of stopped going to church for a little while because it felt like I just had to go to church before that. And then all of a sudden, I got an invitation by Kenny Bowen on my wrestling team to go to a Spirit-filled church in St. Louis. And then that's where I kind of first went to a youth group. And there was these young kids who were praising and worshiping a God who it seemed like he wasn't looking at them under a microscope, and he was just loving them no matter what. Unconditional love, agape type of love, and they had this joy and this lightness to them. And that was kind of my first experience, and that's where I really kind of got saved and really gave my life to God. And since then, it's been a constant up and down. And then me realizing that I've been given a great amount of gifts, and to whom much is given, much is required, and just trying to be a man who is by no means perfect, but trying his best to be the best possible man and athlete and entrepreneur, but then also father and husband, and then also fighter on the planet.
Yeah. And so you've been married to Bree for over 10 years. You guys have adoptive children.
Mm-hmm.
How is that? Are there anything that surprised you about that? Being an adoptive parent.
It's funny because, from the outside looking in, there's probably people who think, man, that must be very, very unique. It must be very, very out of the ordinary. I've got someone who's got biological children. Say they got 3 biological children, and I've got 2 adoptive boys and a biological daughter now. And you probably think from the outside looking in, it must be a lot different, but it's really not. Even though my boys don't look like me, when it like different skin color, they are not my genes, obviously. So we have different facial features and whatnot, but they do look like me. They do act like me. They do have the same mannerisms as me. They do have the same kind of voice inflection and little jokes and little quirks and little things. It's just funny how it's so much more nurture than it is nature.
Yeah, you feed them enough, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, I think more than anything, obviously with the skin color difference, there was always that little bit of fear. What's it going to be like when we're out in public, and how is the outside world going to accept this?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that was one of our biggest fears, obviously, because it's like it doesn't matter. People can love it or hate it or dislike it or think it's weird or whatever. But we were still in the city where we adopted Hap, and we had to stay there for like 2 weeks because you have to wait for the paperwork to go through. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't let the paperwork go through, that's technically like kidnapping.
Right, yeah.
You got to get the paperwork done, then you can leave the state line type of deal.
Michael Chandler
kidnapped a child. Exactly. Yeah. So we were like, well, we got to wait, and it took like 2 weeks. So we actually just rented a hotel, and we would walk around this mall. It was a big old beautiful mall, at least. And we had a stroller, and we would walk around, and we were sitting in the food court, and Hap was just a baby, right? And me and Bree were sitting there, and there was this little bit older, beautiful black lady kind of sitting over there, and she kind of looks over, and I was like, and this is my first experience, like I just adopted this child who has a different skin color than me, and I'm like, and then she's like looking over, and I can tell she's like looking over. Mm-hmm. But then there was like a little bit of a smile, and I was not quite sure. And then she gets up, and she gets done with her food, and she gets up, and she starts walking over to us, and my heart is just pounding, and I'm like, is this going to be that moment where it's like, oh, this is, how is she going to react? And she comes over, and she's just so sweet and so gracious and so like almost like tears in her eyes. Mm-hmm. That it's like, this is such a beautiful thing. And I think that was that moment where God was like, hey, there's going to be bumps in the road here and there. There's going to be some weirdness with it because we live in a fallen world. But overall, this is accepted by humanity, and it's accepted by God, and it's accepted by people. So that was my first experience. And then since then, of course, it's different here and there with social media and comments and whatnot. But overall, I wouldn't change it for the world. Those are my boys. You cannot. What's really funny about adoption is I was just talking to my buddy Chris, who just adopted a little girl, and he's like, dude, the one thing I didn't know is like I had my biological children already, and I was a little bit nervous about how I was going to feel about this. And he said the moment I held her, the moment I laid my eyes on her, he's like, this is my daughter, and it feels zero different. There is zero difference, and that's how I felt with Hap and Ace. You cannot convince me that I didn't make that child, right?
Right.
I don't like the biological side of things. It's just funny how, when you're called to do it, it is 100% just the exact same thing, and sometimes maybe even more impactful.
So you're very open about your faith, like even thus far, even within our interview, it's something super important for you. But I imagine there's got to be times when there's doubt, you've experienced loss, and we'll talk about some of those losses. There's one time after a loss that, I think you were in the office a couple of days after that, and I was stunned at what you said, and we'll talk about that. And it has lasted with me, and it's so huge. And that's why I wanted to sit down with you, mm-hmm. because this encourages me as a man, right, to understand and learn these things. And so that faith, like when doubt comes, when injury has come, I've walked with you through mm-hmm. some of those injuries, the losses that not only I see, but the world sees. Mm-hmm. What does that look like when you lose or things aren't going well?
Man, it's evolved, which is really funny because if we would have had this conversation, 10 years ago, I went through a very, very tough time in my life and in my career, and I'm so thankful for it. But I came into the sport in 2009. I won my first 12 fights, and I won my first 12 fights, and I think I had like 9 or 10 finishes.
It's crazy.
Meaning I went out there and finished somebody before,
like Iron Mike.
Yeah, exactly like Mike Tyson was going out there just finishing dudes real quick. And then all of a sudden I had my first loss. I lost to Eddie Alvarez in a rematch, and I lost the title. And then because I lost that fight, everything fell by the wayside, and I immediately thought I was a fraud. I wasn't as good as I thought I was. I hid from everybody, didn't want to do interviews, didn't really talk to Bree about it, didn't really talk to my friends about it. If I did talk about it, I kind of just made a joke about it. I immediately thought I didn't have all these skills that I had when I walked into the cage, I had a certain amount of skills, and then when I walked out of this cage, I had the same amount of skills. It was just a different perception of my skills that I had. And then I just kind of fell into I call it the comfortable jail cell of self-pity, where you're just you're down on yourself, you're not thinking clearly, you're thinking negatively nonstop, and it's just this constant cycle of being stuck, and even more so just thinking less of yourself and looking in the mirror and looking at a loser, and putting on your pants in the morning to a loser, and brushing a loser's teeth and combing a loser's hair, and you're living in that identity. And I lost 3 fights in a row, went 688 days without winning a fight, thought my career was possibly going to be over. I had just married Bree just a couple 6 months prior. I stood at the altar and promised her I was going to take care of her, love her, and provide for her. And then all of a sudden, I'm not sure if I'm going to get a phone call on the Monday after my fight that saying, hey, we're cutting you because you just lost your 3rd fight in a row. So it was a gut check. It was a man check, right? And I think men, we need those moments in our life to get checked, to say, hey, who are you when everything goes to hell in a handbasket? Like, who are you when the bad times come? Who are you when you are going through something that is really testing not just your will to keep moving, but just like your identity and who you are as a man? Yeah. So that changed me. And then I just think growing through it all, and the identity of realizing that God didn't put any of us on this earth to be perfect, right? We were born into sin, into a fallen world, and we have these high hopes. I'm sure when you started your practice, it was like, hey, here's my goals, and here's what we're going to do, and I'm never going to have a bad outcome, or never going to have a bad this, a bad that. It's great to have great aspirations, and when I got into the sport, I was like, man, I'm never going to lose. I'm going to be undefeated nonstop, never going to lose a fight. And then all of a sudden, once you've had a couple losses, you start to realize that sometimes those losses are some of the best things that can happen to you for the long run, because this whole thing is a marathon, not a sprint. And here I am, 39 years old, looking back at my entire career for 16 years and built a beautiful life for my family and this legacy. And it wouldn't be as impactful if I was just undefeated the whole time. Right. It really wouldn't have. So it's evolved over the years, and I've realized that I wasn't called to this sport to be perfect and be undefeated. I was called to be a light to show people how a champion responds, how a champion responds to a loss, responds to an injury, responds to a setback, and then also wearing my heart on my sleeve, talking about my doubts and my fears and my insecurities and all of those different things, because I think in the macho man business that we're in, where we're supposed to be larger than life figures and we're supposed to be infallible and we're supposed to be impenetrable, I just want to let everybody know I'm a normal guy, and I have doubts and fears and insecurities just like you and just like everyone else. Yeah. And I think that's the real message that is so important in this, right?
Oh, for sure. So, I mean, that men don't talk about that enough.
Yeah.
Right. To say, hey, this is where I am. I'm not this. You see me in this ring and these things, and I'm not always that confident person. There's these ups and downs to those things. As we talk about those times when you lost those 3 fights and you just married Bree, I want to understand how Bree was towards you during that time.
Amazing, like just absolutely perfect. I was too stubborn, dumb, hurt, injured, in pain to really appreciate it. because, you know, as men, like when you have this identity, and this is how things evolve too. Like back then, I was a fighter. I was Michael Chandler, the fighter, but I wasn't really Michael Chandler, the man, or even like the husband. I was a husband because of a marriage certificate we signed, and I was a good husband. I was a good partner. I was a good, and I led with love, and I led with humility and stuff. But like my identity was still like, I'm a fighter first, and that's the only thing that matters, because I got to win these world titles, and now I married her, so now I got to make a bunch of money, and I got to be under the biggest lights and the brightest lights and the biggest platform, you know, for her, but really so I can continue to make good on this promise that I made to myself. And she was so gracious. She knows when to interject her opinion or her wisdom and her discernment, but she also knows when to stay quiet and not in a way where it's like, hey, I'm in charge, you talk when I want you to talk type of thing. But it's just, and how it's evolved over the years, and now seeing our relationship, and I run everything by her. I talk to her about every single thing, every single decision, whether it's business, whether it's parenting, whether it's even fighting in my fight career, what fight to take next. Because I think there's a special, God created us very similar and different, and to complement each other, to where without each other we can't be the best versions of ourselves or make the biggest amount of impact without each other, without a woman's discernment, without a woman's love and nurturing and competence in certain areas, and then a man's competence in his areas. And she is like my direct line straight to God, where God speaks to her and then through her to me in a lot of ways. Because I swear I'm asking and I'm trying to figure it out. I was like, God, give me wisdom, and I'm not really getting the clarity. Then I have a conversation with her, and then all of a sudden it clicks, you know. So, and during that time, she was the exact same way, but we were just very young in our marriage, and I hadn't really realized it yet. But she was just, the funny thing is, you know, all the things that we have gone through and the ups and downs of this career, she's always been completely okay with losing everything and ended up in a little bitty shack together, you know, and that's the most beautiful thing on the planet. It's the most beautiful thing on earth, and all the cool stuff I get to do, and the lights and the big fights in Madison Square Garden, all that stuff is really, really cool, but that stuff's going to go away.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be on the internet somewhere, but there's going to be another guy fighting in Madison Square Garden this November, and then another big fight the next November, and then there's going to be, you know, we're talking about this fight at the White House coming up, possibly. That might be like a one-of-one type of thing, but overall the fights are just going to keep getting bigger, and then eventually Michael Chandler, the fighter, is going to be some guy who fought, and had some good fights, but what's going to last? What's going to last is my relationship with her. What's going to last is me being the best father I can to my children. So she's my rock. And she also holds, like, in the other thing is, she does hold me accountable. She is like, she knows she holds me accountable to the things that I say that I want to do, because she knows that if I want to make a commitment, I need to make good on those promises. And it's in a very loving way, but also like hey, I am your wife, but I am also like, I need to be your greatest indicator of, and remind you of why you started and why you went down a certain path.
Yeah.
You know,
So when you're not fighting or training, what's a perfect day look like for you?
So even when I'm not in training camp, I'm still obviously trying to train and stay in shape and doing that. So I'll get some kind of workout in. But man, I think dropping my kids off at school, I really enjoy that. And I think right now we're in this season where, you know, when I go to these training camps, you know, I train down in Florida, so I do have to leave the family for 8 to 10 weeks, and I come back home on the weekends, but it's just 36 hours I get to see them. So I'm kind of gone for a little while, and I'm like all the way out. And then so when I'm back home, I want to be all the way in. So my perfect day starts with getting the kids ready, having a nice little breakfast and a nice little morning, getting the kids to school, because I really enjoy that. Then getting a workout in, and then, man, maybe work on a little bit of business, maybe not. Sometimes I kind of go in and out with the seasons of that. Have lunch with a friend, play some golf. Golf has become my only hobby these days, and I really, really enjoy it. I never thought I would. My dad was a union carpenter, never played golf, kind of kind of poo-pooed on golf and made fun of the people who had time to golf. The only people who play golf are the people who have time to play golf, type of things. I was like, okay, I guess I'll never golf because I want to be like my dad. And then all of a sudden I got, like about 5 years ago, I got some clubs and I was like, man, this is actually, it's the only time that I really like shut my phone off. Like I put it on Do Not Disturb, and then Bree can call me, our nanny can call me in case she's with one of the kids, my mom and my mom and dad, and my manager. And then I'll just throw the phone in the cart and then just go play. And you're under God's green, you're around God's green earth, His creation, the sun. You're with some buddies. It's just very relaxing, and it's very challenging because it's such a, it's such an independent sport. It's just you versus you. So golf, and then go pick the boys up from school if I can, and then dinner, and then snuggle Bree on the couch, and then go watch some Netflix or something.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that golfing thing. What I do is not golf. I wouldn't call it that, at least. It's very, very challenging. My boys picked that up this summer. I'm
Really?
super thankful for them at this age, 16 and 18. I was like, you can play that forever, and it's such a fun thing to do.
It is, and it's so challenging, and and I'm kind of excited too. I mean, it's a great way to go spend 4-5 hours with your son too. Like, I would love for my boys to pick up golf a little bit, and we can go play 18 holes, and you're spending time with your son, but also doing something that you love. So yeah, we'll see.
So the last 2 fights you've lost, and I think it was the fight before, which was, I think it was Pimblett.
The last one was Patty Pimblett. The one before that was Charles Oliveira.
That fight. That's the fight that I remember. You came to the office and you're like, did you see it? And I remember, like, that was a tough fight. Tough.
Yeah.
All the way around. But I remember your excitement about it.
Yeah.
That I heard, because I thought when you were like, did you see it, as in there's going to be this down kind of moment, right? I'm always trying to gauge when with you guys as athletes, all the professional athletes that I see that come in, like where they are, because that's something for me to understand as far as when I'm treating, right? Yep. But I never forget my surprise, because I thought that you would be down about it, but you were like, it was almost as if you had won. And I remember talking about that. I want you to explain to the people why that was so, like literally, I was like, wait, yeah, that fight was tough.
Yeah.
But you came out of like, man, tell me what you were feeling after that fight.
It's so funny, Greg, because we think about athletics and you're like, well, if you win, you should be happy. If you lose, you should be sad. You should be upset. You should be mad, right? And of course, there was parts of me that was, every time I lose, you're just like, it stinks, man. I want to win. I want to keep on climbing. I want the satisfaction of victory because I know the work that I put in. But at some point too, I think because it's such an oxymoron where you're just like, hey, I don't care as much about the wins and the losses. All I care about is giving my best effort. Did I train every single day the best that I possibly could and I prepared? Absolutely. Did I show up on fight night prepared and ready? Yes. Did I go out there and give it my all? Did I make some mistakes? Yeah. Could I have fought better? Yeah, I'm sure, but hindsight is always 20/20. We can go back and watch every single competition across the world since day one, since the first Olympics back in the day, that you could have done something better. You could have zigged when you should have zagged. You could have made a different decision. So there's no sense in looking back and saying, man, I wish I would have done this and I wish I would have done that. But I think my identity is not wrapped up in the fighting result. My identity is wrapped up in who I am and how people can perceive what I'm trying to do. And I think the thing about that fight was, I came in here because I had an injury. I got kicked in the leg. We saw the video. I showed you the video and basically really bent my leg, and we had kind of some adductor stuff and like almost like some MCL and some stuff going on there. And that happened in the first round. So it kind of just threw the whole fight off. A guy who, like we were talking about, the Iron Mike Tyson style, Iron Michael style, where I'm just going forward and I'm fighting. That's my style, and I'm constantly stalking it in your face. And because my left leg, which is my front leg, was kind of messed up, it kind of just threw off the whole game plan. So I ended up getting taken down and controlled. And Charles Oliveira won 4 rounds of that 5 rounds. But in the 5th round, against all odds, my coach Henry is like, hey man, you're down on the scorecards. You got to go out there. You got to get a knockout. Yeah. I go out there. I hurt Charles Oliveira really bad with a right hand. He's stumbling. He's falling. He falls. He goes up against the cage. I hit him again. He falls, and it's like I almost come back and finish him in the 5th round, but then we kind of roll around a little bit. He takes my back, and then I look over and I see Hunter Campbell, who's the number 2 in charge at the UFC, right below Dana White, and he's kind of looking at me, and he can tell. And I kind of like give him like a little smile, and he can tell him I'm about to do something, and he cracks a little bit of a smile. And then Donald Trump's sitting next to him, Kid Rock's sitting next to him, Elon Musk is sitting next to him, and I kind of like look at all those guys, and I'm like, man, and kind of I don't remember what I thought, but I'm sure what I thought was, we're down on the scorecards. There's no way to win this fight. Let's give them a show. Let's do something special. So Charles Oliveira's on my back, and I climb to my feet, and I grab his hand so he can't choke me, and I jump up and I slam him. And the entire Madison Square Garden, 19,600 people, completely sold out. The entire place erupts, and it's just crazy. And then everybody's on their feet at this time. Kid Rock's going, ah, you can kind of see him in the background, he's doing that number. Because I look back over at Trump, who's like smiling with that like little Donald Trump smile, and then Hunter Campbell is looking at me, and he shakes his head like, "You're gonna do it again, aren't you?" And I climb back to my feet, and at this time, some people had sat down because we were on the ground, but then people stood back up and started screaming, almost like they were cheering, like, "Do it again, do it again, do it again." Mm-hmm. And I slam them again, and then it just erupts again. And I think I get it. It's theatrics. It's whatever. Hey, good job, buddy. You slammed him twice. You still lost the fight. You're still the loser of the fight. You still failed. He still won. Mm-hmm. I get it. But fighting is a metaphor for life. People go there to kind of, number one, escape the outside world so they can just be entertained. And they also realize that what they're watching is a metaphor for life. They're watching 2 guys or 2 gals fight each other, and there's struggle, and there's pain, and there's danger, and there's a little violence, and there's all these things going on in this big, cool event that they came to, with the lights and the theatrics and the music and all that stuff. And sometimes doing things like that makes people remember way more than the win. Like if you talk about Chandler versus Oliveira, what was your favorite part of that fight? 90% of the people would have said when Chandler stood up twice with a grown man on his back, the most decorated submission artist of all time. Charles Oliveira, who was on my back, has the most submission wins in UFC history, the most submission fight bonuses in UFC history. Yet I braved the unknown, didn't care, stood up with a grown man on my back with a busted leg that nobody knew about, because we talked about it after. I already had a kind of a busted leg, and then slam him, not once, but twice. You know, and then they gave me the microphone after a loss, which they don't usually do when you lose. And I ripped off a promo and called out Conor again, and like all that stuff. So it wasn't that I was happy about the loss. It was just like, okay, you got the loss, but then you got these 1,000 other factors that happened there, and you did something. You did something unique, and you did something that not a lot of people would have done. Mm-hmm. And I entertained people, and I sold out Madison Square Garden again, and it was just. I think I just love doing what I do because I know it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone and over eventually. Mm-hmm. So I want to enjoy it, whether I win or lose. And you know, some people probably say, okay, well maybe he doesn't have a champion mentality, or he's not a winner, or he's not whatever. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but also I'm living my passion and my purpose and my joy, and I'm going to do it how I want to do it, and it's my way. And if you don't like that, you can go follow the next guy who wins every fight. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of McGregor, mm-hmm. That's set for June of this year. That's 5 months from 5 months from now.
Yeah, which is crazy because that's not a long time when you think you got to do a 3-month training camp. Yes, some talks are happening right now. There's a lot of chatter in the media. Conor's doing interviews saying he wants to fight me. I'm doing interviews saying I want to fight him. Obviously, Dana has said Conor's going to come back and be on the White House. To remind people, we did the Ultimate Fighter show where it's a reality show, Conor versus me. We both had a team. our teams fought, and then at the end of it, the coaches fight. So we were supposed to fight June of 2024. That fight got canceled. And, Conor has had, it's widely documented across the internet, like Conor's ups and downs with his, being outside of the octagon and some of the stuff that's been going on in his life. But most recently, too, I feel like he's had somewhat of an epiphany of why he is on this planet. He did a treatment, and he said he saw his death, and he saw his family, and he also saw Jesus, and he kind of gave his life to Christ, or re-gave his life to Christ, and married his longtime fiance. So he's made a lot of very positive decisions kind of in his life, because I've never walked a mile in that man's shoes. If I had that much money and power and fame and all that kind of stuff, I think I'd handle it pretty well, but it definitely can change a man, right? So I think it's good to see the path that he is on. So I think right now there's a higher probability that the fight between me and Conor will happen than there ever has been, even more so than June of 24 when we were supposed to fight, because that was just a regular fight. It was a fight in Vegas. It was International Fight Week. Conor's been there, done that. He's got the highest gate, the most amount of pay-per-views. He's got the highest merch sales. He's got the highest paid everything,
Yeah.
But fighting at the White House is something that is historic. That's something that will never be done again. That can never be done again. I always make the joke, like, until Elon Musk gets us to Mars and they put an octagon on Mars, like, what else could be bigger? I mean, where else could they put a UFC octagon and hold a show that could possibly be bigger than this? Maybe the Coliseum in Rome, like something like that.
That'd be fun.
It'd be really cool. But even still, for American fans, on the White House lawn, on the 250th anniversary of this country, it's something so historic that it's almost like Conor has to be on the card. So that's the plan. It's June 14th, Donald Trump's birthday. He decided to put it on his birthday as well. That's the plan right now, and we're planning accordingly. I was just down in Florida training a little bit, getting my house in order down there, getting ready for a training camp.
So your body is your profession, right? And you've dealt with hand injuries, ankle injuries, back injuries. How's your relationship with your body? How do you see that? And kind of what I'm getting at is, because of the things that I do every day, and I encourage people to nutrition and exercise and their mental things, right? How they think. How's that been for you to understand to be your very best? What are the things that you do?
It's a good question. I mean, yeah, I always preface this kind of question with, I realize that it is way harder for the average human being to be in shape and follow a great diet and recover and be disciplined, because it's not their profession. Like, my profession literally is my body. Like you said, if I don't have my body, even performing decently optimally, I don't create a life for my family and I don't provide for them. So it's very easy for me to say, hey, I do this and this and this and this, and I'm so disciplined and I work so hard. That's why I always had this kind of thought of like the unsung kind of people out there grinding, like the guy who does work a 9 to 5, who does own his own business, but you still find time to get in the gym, and you still find time to eat healthy, you still find time to invest in your health because it's important to you. And there's really no requirement to it aside from the fact that you want to be healthier, right? But for me, my requirement is I have to do that in order to provide for my family. But I just wish, and I've been thinking about this a lot, I wish people knew what it felt like just for one day to feel at their best physically. Yeah. Because I think we've just continued to kind of dummy down and be desensitized to what it actually feels to live in a human body with normal feeling joints and a normal microbiome and a normal kind of brain function because of their nutrition and not all the processed stuff and all of the sugars and all of the additives and all of the dyes and all those things. Because you don't know what you don't know. You know, when you wake up every morning and you're like, well, this is just what I feel like because this is what I feel like. And it's like, there's so many changes that you can make that are massive. And a lot of it has to do with inflammation. I'm constantly focused on, okay, with my diet, making sure I am eating anti-inflammatory foods or taking my anti-inflammatories, a lot of curcumin and turmeric and fish oils, and then continuing to move. Like I know, and this is numerous times we have seen each other, and like when my body doesn't feel good, the funniest thing is I could be in a training camp on the 8th week, and I would be doing 2-a-days and 3-a-days. And my workouts aren't just like lifting weights and running. It's like guys are punching me, kicking me, kneeing me, and elbowing me, and cranking on my joints, and punching me in the ribs, and punching me in the body.
Yeah.
But my body feels so great after sparring and training and doing all those things 7 weeks in, so much better than it does 7 weeks after the fight, after I've kind of given my body some rest. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't ever want to minimize rest. Like, we need to rest and recover. But for me, and I think I've talked to a lot of fighters and even athletes, like after this season with football, it's like, hey, your body starts to tense up and get real tight when you're not moving. Mm-hmm. So it's like that the old cliche saying of movement is medicine really is true. Even if it's just walking and moving around, rolling out, hitting your sauna. I do red light, I do oxygen therapy, I do the PIMF mat, I do obviously try to supplement perfectly. Mm-hmm. And it's just, as I've gotten older, I'm a little bit different, I think, because I've heard so many people. I mean, I got 30-year-olds in the gym, right? These young guys. I'm almost a decade older than this 30-year-old who's like, wow, man, I don't recover like I used to. Or, you know how it is, you hit 30 and it's like your joints are hurting. And I'm like, I don't mean to be, mean or harsh or whatever, but I don't believe that God created our bodies to last 30 years and then all of a sudden they all go downhill. Like, I think it's all how we take care of ourselves.
Exactly.
And I can just say at 39, my body still feels almost just as good as it did when I was 25, 30. And I've gone through some wars, and I have put millions and millions and millions and millions of reps in. Mm-hmm. But I think that's why. I think the continued activity, as long as I just do something, take a little bit of time off. Sometimes I need to take a little bit of time off just to get the hunger back, because you can kind of become mundane and you become somewhat robotic, and you kind of start to hate it. So you start to dislike it or hate it a little bit because you do it all the time when it comes to like the MMA training and stuff. So I got to pull myself away mentally. But my relationship with my body has continued, I think, to get better, but also, some people say you get a little bit older and you start to work smarter, not harder. Right. There's some of that, but also ignorance is bliss. I think I still have this mentality that I'm going to ignore things. Like, if I have a little bit of a pain here and there, whatever, I'm going to ignore it a little bit. And if it persists, then I'll, go see somebody. You'll be my first call, of course. Yeah. And ask for your opinion, but I just try to ignore things because I've seen so many things kind of get better if I just continue to focus on it a little bit, and then things work out.
So with my profession, as an orthopedic surgeon, that then wanted to try to keep people out of the operating room. That was, that's where I live now, and doing, especially 9-10 years ago, something very novel in the way of stem cells and growth factors, right? Mm-hmm. Which, when I came to Nashville, nobody was doing that. Yep. And I like to say that I'm kind of the OG in those things. And when you initially had a hand injury, mm-hmm. and I don't even remember how you got to me.
It might have been Jeremy Holt, or I might have just Googled, because you're like, same thing I did with Jeremy Holt, which Jeremy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was just like strength and conditioning coaches in Nashville, Tennessee, and then find their Instagram and look, and you kind of see who they're training, how they're training, and then like kind of their mentality. If you'd be like, hey, would I mesh with this guy? It was either Jeremy sent me to you, or I looked you up, and you were obviously the OG. And then obviously the orthopedic background is paramount. Like, that's, you want somebody who knows about the body, the joints, the most likely the injuries that I have going on. Right. It might have been Jeremy. I think it was Jeremy.
What was it for you as far as being open to treatments like that?
I think it's still somewhat, like you said, like not as well known as it should be. Like, it's continuing to grow. I mean, it's grown a ton over the last 10 years or so. But I think more than anything, it's not that I don't believe in surgeries or any of that. Like, there's times where people need the surgeries, but like you said, I mean, trying to keep people out of the operating room. Well, if you say you're trying to keep people out of the operating room, that means, well, there must be at least something we can try before let's make that the last effort. Let's say, okay, we're going to try this within the confines of drug testing and what's legal and what you can actually take, which that's a whole different story where I feel like we should be able to take more things than we're allowed to take to just heal our bodies. That's not performance enhancing, but try one thing, try another thing, and try another, and then at the very last stitch effort, like then we go to surgery if there's something going on. And I think I had a really painful, but it wasn't a bad injury, right? But it was very, very painful. I couldn't turn a doorknob. I would shake somebody's hand and I would almost fall to my freaking knees. Yeah. And I got a pretty high pain tolerance, but like the hand, I think I threw an overhand right like this, and it wasn't even a hard one. And I just hit a guy on the head, and it it pulled this knuckle down, and we had something going on back here with those little square muscle, or this little square bones back there, and it was just so painful. And I was like, well, I don't even know. I think we got an MRI, maybe, because it was after a fight. And it didn't need surgery, but even if it did need surgery, I probably would have been like, hey, let's try this first. Yeah. I think that's just, and like I said, not to be disrespectful to the orthopedic surgeons or anybody. It's just like, for me personally, that's going to be my last option, or I'll get a second opinion or a third opinion and kind of see. And then that's why there's been the emergence of men like you and professionals and doctors like you, where it's like, hey, I get it. I did my residency and my fellowship, and I am an orthopedic surgeon, but let's not just go into the knife right away, So that's kind of my thought. And I think I've just done enough research, and I've also had enough anecdotal evidence to know that the body, not that the body heals itself in every aspect, right, but there is a lot of that. Yeah. Like you talk about with your patients, it's like, well, hey, let's make sure we're talking about our diet. Let's make sure we're talking about our corrective exercises, or a little bit of rehab, or and then obviously some regenerative medicine before we talk about going under the knife, because all of that is part of it. Yeah. If you're not giving the body what it needs to heal itself, or you're not getting the proper rest or the proper rehab, then you're not gonna put yourself in the position for it to somewhat improve itself without going under the knife. And then if we need to, you need to.
My experience with UFC, I remember there was a match here in Nashville, and we talked about it. It was Wonder Boy and was it Pettis?
Yeah, that was in 2017. That was right when I moved here. Yeah, I think.
And I remember talking to you about that, and I remember I think Pettis had gained weight to fight Wonder Boy in that way. Wonder Boy was the favorite. Pettis comes out, and there's not a lot of fanfare. He's sitting in the ring, and then Wonder Boy comes out, and there's just like all this stuff, right? And I remember the fight happened, and Wonder Boy was in control, complete control. And then there was a moment, I think in the fourth or so, and I remember talking about this to you about, he did this thing where it's like it was going to come from this side, but it came from the other. It's like this Superman punch or something like this, and knocked him out.
Yeah, knocked him out cold.
Cold. And I remember when he came to, and you could tell what he mouthed to him. He said, "Great punch."
Yeah.
You guys are, except for I don't think this is about the heavyweights aren't like this, but everybody else, for the most part, are very gracious to one another. Like, you go in there to win, but you guys are really gracious in a family. And tell me, this is your world.
Yeah.
Is that what you feel? Is that what you see? Is that who you are?
Yeah, it really is. And first of all, you're talking about Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's a great friend of mine. We just spent like 6 weeks together in London. We did the Roadhouse movie, and so and he's legitimately the nicest. Not just maybe nicest fighter in the world, but maybe the nicest professional athlete in the world. He's a sweetheart of a human. He's awesome. He's talented. He wants to knock you out, but he also is just like, he'll pick you back up type of guy. But overall, I think that's really the misconception of what fighters are. Like, literally the last thing I want to do is get into a verbal or a physical altercation with anybody outside of a training or a fight, like a real sanctioned fight, because we already do it all the time. Like we get that out, we get that aggression, and I also have nothing to prove whatsoever. Like you can have 100 guys come in here and call me a sissy for the way I dress or whatever, and it's like, okay, dude, that's cool. Go check the resume, man. Go check YouTube real quick. Like I don't need to prove that I'm a tough guy.
Yeah.
So I think with that, it's just like we don't have as much to prove, and I think, you know, it kind of goes back to the heart of a man. Every man on the planet, like God created us for a battle to fight, an adventure to have, and a beauty to win, right? And in society today, life has become very easy for everybody, but it's become easier for men. We were created to struggle. We were created to aspire to be something, to do something, to create something. We were created for battles, and not necessarily physical battles between two people, but a battle. You're battling every day inside your practice to become a better provider and grow the business. You're battling to get your message out, and you're battling your inner demons, right? And there's a lot of metaphorical battles, but then physical battles too, like working out and fitness and challenging yourself and challenging yourself so much that you fail in the gym and then you find out about yourself. I mean, our relationship with failure and our relationship with pain and our relationship with struggle is just, it's so intact. And we don't need to prove that we're tough guys. That, yeah, I mean, I lose, I'm sad, I'm mad, but I'm not mad at the guy. If you and me are fighting, I'm looking across the cage and I don't see Ethan Kellum. I see a head and I see two arms and I see two legs, and there's no soul, there's no nothing. It's not person to person, it's just targets. It's a job to get done. And then if you beat me, you beat me. Like what am I supposed to do? Be mad at you? All you were trying to do was do your job. If I beat you, what are you gonna be mad at me? All I was trying to do was do my job. So I think it's just a different mentality than people think, because, you know, you get on, you know, Instagram today and watch all these street fights of, like, you know, people getting in altercations out there. Like, those people are legitimately mad at each other and have a reason to fight, but we're just doing it for sport. You know, we're doing it because that's what we were called to do, or that's what we love to do. And in the sport, there's certain guys who were like, hey, I'm a born fighter, and I had some tough things in my past, and I got in a bunch of street fights, and I like doing it. I like the violence. I like hurting people. There's a certain subsect of the sport like that, but overall, we're just athletes. I'm a college-educated guy who was a Division I wrestling All-American who just loved at Missouri, who just loved hand-to-hand combat, and I fight because I want to fight, not because I needed to fight. You know, I had my degree. I could have went and the guy who handles my finances is a guy named Justin Cole, who I wrestled with in college. We had the same degree, personal financial management services, with an emphasis in real estate. He's a partner at Creative Planning in Kansas City, and they handle my finances. So, like, I could have very well been doing that and handling people's finances, but I chose to continue to compete. So it's something I do because I feel like I'm called to do it, and there's just a humility about it, because we also know that every single fight isn't the end all be all. You know, Wonder Boy what are we talking about? That was 8 years ago, 8 years ago, and Wonder Boy is still fighting. He's probably made millions of dollars since then. His star has grown. He was just in Roadhouse 2. He's been in numerous commercials. He's got a baby on the way. He's got a great life. That fight right there didn't define him, and it wasn't the end, too. So I think it's so hard to explain to the average fan how most of us feel. And the guys like Wonder Boy who can open his eyes, his ears are ringing, he looks around, he's like, gosh dang it, I just got knocked out. It's hard to explain that a guy like that who can stand up and say, hey, nice punch, hug, man, God bless you, man, see you in the next one.
It gives me chills to think about it.
Yeah.
I was like, this dude what?
Yeah. Compared to the guy who's just like, and they bad sport, like there's something internal going on there, or there's an identity issue where his whole identity, Wonder Boy's whole identity is not wrapped up in him being a fighter. Yeah. And this guy has been a fighter since he was like, I think, young. He fought like 100 kickboxing fights before he got into mixed martial arts. That's all he's ever done. So you would think, if anybody, that's his identity. But I think it's the guys that you see that are just, it ruins their whole life. Like me, when I talked about the 688-day loss streak, my identity was wrapped up in it, and everything hinged upon the win and the loss. And that isn't just in sport or athletics or fighting; it's in life. And I think that's why people love the sport, and they're watching guys win, and they're watching guys lose, and they're watching the way that they come back, and it's a metaphor and a lesson for every single man, especially every single walk of life, whether you're working for the man, or you are the man and you're the boss and you're an entrepreneur, or you're going off on a new endeavor, or you just got laid off and you're unemployed. I mean, or you just got filing for bankruptcy. Like, all of that stuff is kind of thrown into what's going on inside of that cage, and that's why people love it, because you're watching a struggle, and you're watching a fight, and you're watching entertainment, and you're watching people win and lose, and really brave the unknown. Because Wonder Boy got knocked out cold, bad knockout, like embarrassing looking and painful looking, and will he ever fight again type of knockout, you know? Yeah. And here he is a decade later, still crushing it.
Yeah, that, like I said, gives me chills to think about it and understand, and the abundance in that. To be able to say, man, great punch.
Yeah.
Michael, last question, and obviously, you got 3 children, a beautiful wife. You've had an amazing career that's still going, right? You've got a gym here in Nashville, Tennessee. You mentor young fighters. What is it for you that you want to be known for? What's your legacy?
Man, such a good question, right? I think at this point, will I ever be champion? It remains to be seen, but it's not as likely now as it was a year ago or so. But being a champion doesn't necessarily define the man, because this is a marathon, right? This whole life is a marathon. What I do next may be my biggest thing that I'm going to end up doing. What I do after that may be my biggest thing that I end up doing. But I think it's more than anything, I started out just like millions and millions and millions of young men out there, that I was a small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things. And I had a great upbringing, a great mom and dad, and I had some very great blessings in life, but overall I was never taught that I can go out there and do something special with my life. And I want my life to be a beacon of hope for young men out there who feel that way, that they're just like, I don't know if I deserve success. I don't know if I deserve masses of amounts of peace and joy and contentment. And I'm here to tell those young men that if you do the right thing, if you operate with integrity, if you work your tail off, if you stay disciplined, if you set a standard for yourself and you hold the standard, if you're a man of your word, and if you just take chances, that eventually all the hard work pays off. You just still have to be standing there to receive it when it does. And I think that's where I'm at right now. I got my arms wide open, and I'm receiving the blessing of all the hard work and all the pounding of the pavement, all the seeds that I sowed, all of those years and decades that are finally being reaped right now. And I think the best is still yet to come. So I think that's really all it is. I'm no different than anybody else out there. There's a little guy from a little town who was taught to do little things. 100% will admit that I never thought I would be where I'm at today. But over time, I've continued to grow into the man that God created me to be.
Okay, this is really the last question.
Okay.
Right? Really last question. Because you've mentioned this several times, and it's something that's very important to me. I grew up without a father. Who was it that helped you to learn what it's like to be a man? And as you talk to other men, like that's super important. Who was it? Who was it in your life?
So, it was my dad. My dad. But I think you got your heavenly father, and then you've got your father on earth, or some type of man who is hopefully becomes that father figure in your life. For me, it was my dad. But my dad is very different than I am now, and I admire so many things about him. He taught me the most important thing, which was hard work and discipline, which was the foundation by which this whole thing has been built. But then through the years, I've always said, like, God continues to put people in your life at the right time for the right reasons, sometimes just for a season, but always for a reason. And then, you know, I just think back to all the coaches that I've had that I looked at like dads on the mat, like this is my father on the mat, right? And then when I get to Mizzou, I had an orthopedic surgeon, actually, our team doctor who we ended up doing a Bible study with. He was the one who I can point to him and say he unlocked my view of like what money, like my relationship with money, because I was always taught people with money must be shrewd or bad people, or they're selfish, or they got it by nefarious ways. But really, here's this very successful orthopedic surgeon who owns a practice in Columbia, Missouri, yet every time we would go over to his house for Bible study, he would always be sitting there doing homework with his 2 daughters, serving them, loving them. He loved his wife, Jana. And this is a guy who had probably, I don't know how much money he had, but I knew he had a lot of money by my standards. So he was the one who kind of really, and we never talked about money, but he showed me how a Christian leader, selfless leader, very successful man who's got some money operates. And it's like all of a sudden that changed my view of what money is, or how my relationship with money would be. Because if I don't have any money, how am I going to bless people? You know, like he would serve, and he would donate, and he would give it away, and he would tithe, and he would do all those different things. So I think it was my dad originally, of course, but then I feel like God has just continued to put so many great men in my life to aspire to be like, to look up to want to emulate. And I want to be that guy for a lot of people, whether it be through the internet where we've never met before and they just see ingest my content, or I get the blessing of being around them and mentoring them. And that's kind of been my thing. Yeah. I'm here to be of service.
Well, you've definitely been an encouragement to me, and a great friend of mine, and I just appreciate who you are and what you do, and it was great to sit down with you today.
Yes, you too. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the platform, and we're going to keep on getting better, man. That's all we're going to do.
I'm Dr. Ethan Kellum. Stay healthy, stay strong, and we'll see you next time.